G'day, Shane Dowling here from kangaroocourtofaustralia.com, and I'm with Serkan Ozturk from True Crime News Weekly. And we're going to discuss the Bruce Lehrmann trial again, the defamation trial. We've done 3 podcasts so far. So if you're new to this, make sure you go to my YouTube channel and you can watch the previous 3 podcasts. But today we're just going to discuss the final submissions, and in particular, the final submissions by all 3 parties in relation to articles that were tendered in court by Bruce Lehrmann, a True Crime News Weekly article, which was the first article to name him, and also 3 articles that I subsequently wrote and published on Kangaroo Court of Australia, and they were also tendered by Bruce Lehrmann. I think the argument, well, I know the argument is that Bruce Lehrmann has put forward, his lawyers, is the fact that Channel 10's The Project published an interview with Brittany Higgins. They didn't name Bruce Lehrmann, but the argument is that the article that True Crime News Weekly wrote and the 3 articles I wrote were an extension, in effect, of that interview, and somehow Channel 10 have got to take liability for that, where he was named, even though they didn't name him. That's a bit of a stretch, I think. But anyhow, we're just going to have a look at the submissions because I find them rather amusing, especially from Channel 10. And also Lisa Wilkinson's barrister, Sue Prasanthu, who I know and she knows me. And we'll get into that in a minute. But I'll just read you out briefly Bruce Lehrmann's closing arguments, just a couple paragraphs of it, where he refers to myself, True Crime News Weekly, Serkan, and myself, Kangaroo Court of Australia. Now, paragraph 352, he says, there was also suggestion in Network 10's written opening submissions that any identification based on their online sources such as True Crime News Weekly or Kangaroo Court of Australia articles was not reasonable because ordinary readers would not have understood these as reputable or reliable sources of information. And then it goes on to say in the same paragraph at the end, the True Crime News Weekly article is detailed and supported by information from Mr. Lehrmann's LinkedIn profile, which lends credibility. The fact is that people obviously did take at least True Crime News Weekly article seriously because it was liked and retweeted hundreds of times. Now, I obviously have a strong opinion of that. I can understand what they're trying to argue. What's your viewpoint of that, Serkan? That's Bruce Lehrmann's submissions.
Yeah, Lehrmann's lawyers having having an imaginary attempt at how I did my journalism. The interesting thing here, Shane, is the most interesting thing here is they talk about you and I so much here, and they don't want either of us to be a part of this case, an official part of this case. Yet we're talked about so much here, but we're a bit beneath them. We're not part of the official media, and so it all stems from this kind of attempt to pretend from this legal industry that our journalism isn't important. And so they've twisted themselves in knots here. First, they want to call us dubious and unreputable. No one's going to believe their journalism. But then they want the judge to also believe, oh, but he was the most accurate journalist ever. And the only reason he was so accurate was because of the project. Bruce Lehrmann's lawyers, and Bruce Lehrmann doesn't know how I did my journalism. They didn't even subpoena me to come to the court case and put questions to me. So these suppositions, these depositions at the end here, at the conclusion of the case, are ludicrous because they're trying to imagine how you and I did our journalism and then trying to suggest that it was all down to Channel 10 that we got our information and we don't have other sources. We don't have other ability to check facts or details. So they've caught themselves as I said, they've twisted themselves in knots here. And to me, it just shows you how ludicrous the whole case is. If we were so important to this case, if our journalism was so dubious and unreputable, how come Bruce Lehrmann's lawyers didn't put you and me on the stand, Shane?
Well, that is the thing. And I think at the beginning, your comment there, you said they made up an imaginary viewpoint of your journalism. And that is the bottom line. They could have subpoenaed you. I think subpoenaing you was a more important part because they've honed in on the fact that in my first article, I wrote 3, which they filed as evidence. But the first one, I referenced you. But I also wrote an email to the Prime Minister's office asking, okay, can you confirm it? Which he refused to respond. But that's the bottom line. They should have subpoenaed you at least. Subpoenaing me, yeah, they could have done that, but you were the most important one because you were the one who originally named him, which they didn't do. And so, as you said, they've made up imaginary viewpoint of your journalism and stuck that in there. So that is the strange part about it. Well, I suppose it's not strange. It suited their agenda. By not
Yes.
subpoenaing you, they could make up some sort of delusional, well, not so much delusional, but some sort of suitable viewpoint they would
Favorable.
have put in. Favorable,
Yeah,
favorable
a
argument.
favor. Yes, a favor. And so the reason why they haven't subpoenaed me personally, like my personal viewpoint of this, is because I would have supported Lisa Wilkinson's argument, which political conspiracy about this. And so they wouldn't want two journalists on the stand saying similar things. And I would have pointed out that I'm a completely different type of journalist to Lisa Wilkinson. And for us to both come to a similar conclusions suggests that there might be something there. So
That's
they
in
obviously
relation to
had
the
their reasons.
conspiracy, the cover up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
with
I
the
see.
Scott Morrison, because that's the most important thing
Yeah.
about this Bruce Lehrmann case, about all the other entities involved in the cover up. And so that's why they haven't subpoenaed me, because they could have asked me questions on was the project the only source I relied on? Did I call Lisa Wilkinson? Did I call the producer Angus Llewellyn? Was I in touch with some junior producer at Channel 10? Do I hang around Channel 10? You know, do I tweet people at Channel 10? They could have asked all these questions,
Well, the
and
bottom
they
line
didn't,
is, yeah,
and
calling
they didn't.
you, the bottom line is they would have undermined their case,
Yes.
would have put a bowling ball right through it. Now, we'll
Yep.
move on to Network 10. Now, the barrister is there, and I forget his name again. I think you
Dr.
remember
Matt Collins. Dr. Matt
Matt
Collins,
Collins,
KC.
Matthew Collins from
Yes.
Melbourne, KC, KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken. And that's all he is after these his submissions. I find it very odd. I'll comment on it first. Now,
Yes.
paragraph 986 of his submissions, it says, nor would the court conclude that any supposed identification as a result of a person reading speculation in an obscure publication of dubious repute or reliability was reasonable, as required by authorities, cited rah, rah, rah. Then it goes on to say at 994, on the authorities, Network 10 is not responsible for the identification of Mr. Lehrmann, including publications. So he's in effect calling us publications of dubious repute or reliability was reasonable. But there's two things there. One, there's the stupidity of it, because in this case we were reliable, 100% reliable. We got our facts right in relation to naming Bruce Lehrmann. But the dubious repute, a barrister cannot make a statement of fact from the bar table unless they have documentary evidence to support it. Now, in their submissions, they attack Bruce Lehrmann on a regular basis, saying he had no evidence to support this, no evidence to support that. You know, he claims there were hundreds of tweets, but he only produced one, so he's got no evidence to produce it. Where is there evidence to support that we're publications of dubious repute or reliability? Not a shred of evidence was tendered, and he's a KC, King's Counsel.
Well, this all comes down to, Shane, that you and I both push the buttons of the legal fraternity, don't we, in Australia? Like very few, because we ask actual hard questions of senior lawyers and judges, even. Very few journalists do that in Australia. So you and I have a reputation, so to speak, with the legal fraternity, and they're just getting slight digs in at us because they know we can't get our own comments back in front of the judge. And but he's also doing a clever tactic here, Dr. Collins. He's trying to suggest to the judge, put it in his head, how come Bruce Lerman hasn't gone after you and me? And so he's just, in terms of, do I believe Dr. Matt Collins thinks my article was dubious itself? No, I think he personally would think the article was pretty spot on, and the intervening years have proven that so. But this is a legal game, and this is why I'm over defamation law. They pretend that it's all about truth and blah, blah, blah. But as you said, here they are calling both you and I dubious when the facts, the truth, the facts of the matter are both you and I were very, very correct on this. And so it's just part of the game. To me, I've got a big smile on my face, Shane. Like, this stuff doesn't affect me. This just, the fact that I push these people's buttons, I have no resources behind me, and we tell the truth to the public. We got such big stories out there. Bruce Lehrmann just one of them. To me, it's job well done to me. So, Dr. Matt Collins, thank you for calling me dubious. I know deep down you know we're not, but that's Channel 10 playing the game, trying to differentiate themselves, saying, "Look, we were professional journalists. We did everything professionally. While these other two guys, they're cowboys, they're gonzos. Bruce should be going after them." And so that's what I think this angle he's gone for, just putting the judge's head that he's gone after the wrong people.
Now, the irony is they're accusing us of dubious repute, the barrister is, but it's his client who's been sued for defamation, not us. So who had the dubious repute? And I wonder what he'd say about News Corp. If News Corp ran a story, they're a lot more dubious than us. We haven't paid out over $1 billion for telling lies in America.
Have you hacked anyone's phones? Have you hacked anyone's phones, Shane? Have you told lies about Iraq war that killed millions of people? No, we haven't. And so I just want the public to know that when the official institutions of the media or politicians or the legal institution fraternity, they call independent journalists like you and me dubious. It's a game. It's a tactic to try and further the truth away from the public and to go back to those so-called traditional sources, which people don't believe anymore. News Corp is a joke. We all know that.
Now we'll move on to Lisa Wilkinson's closing arguments by her barrister, Sue Chrysanthu. She's a senior counsel.
Your old friend.
Yeah, I know her. She knows me, obviously. Not a big fan of mine based on the submissions. Now, you can see in the first two, Lehrmann's lawyers and Channel 10's lawyers, they focused on you, the fact that you broke the story. Yes. And then I get a mention, obviously, because my articles have been tendered as evidence as well. And but mine are seen as more supporting you, I suppose. And that's the way it should be. Now, but Lisa Wilkinson, Sue Chrysanthu, was really honed in on me and had a big swipe. But they're absolutely ridiculous. And Sue Chrysanthu actually concealed her personal interest and her financial interest in having a swipe at me. Now, so I'll read them out briefly, just, a couple of lines of it. In paragraph 452, it says, at the time, Mr. Lehrmann thought that the True Crime Weekly article was a silly Twitter article and silly. And I remember him in the
Yeah.
When I swipe at you. Now,
paragraph I wouldn't call him a journalist.
Now, yeah, that's right. The paragraph 453 is a fairly lengthy paragraph, longer than the ones about you, and she has a swipe about me. And I'll just read out quickly parts of it. There's a reference in his evidence to some material published by Kangaroo Court. They got my name wrong, the website wrong. It's Kangaroo Court of Australia, and I think they know that because if they put the full name, it makes it easier for people to find it on searches. And yours, they call True Crime Weekly. So they've done that with you as well. I think that's deliberate myself to make it harder for people to find us on the internet. My articles were printed in July 2023. Kangaroo Court finally identified Mr. Lehrmann, rah, rah, rah. And towards the end of it, it says, this is not evidence of reasonable identification by either author, me or you, based on the content of the broadsheet. Kangaroo Court is known to this court and the Supreme Court of New South Wales. See Porter v. Australian Broadcasting Corporation, as per Justice Jaggett, and Seven Network v. Dowling, per Justice Reeves, and the other cases involving Kangaroo Court cited within those articles. Those two precedents have no relevance to the case whatsoever, no relevance to my credibility or anything like that, because Porter versus Australian Broadcasting Corporation, Porter versus ABC, was Christian Porter suing the ABC for defamation. And I tried to intervene, or I did intervene, to try and argue against the suppression orders that were ultimately put on that. We never found out the full details.
That's right.
Of, I think, the ABC's defence. So there's a lot of information there we don't know. And that was very important. He was a federal politician, and we are entitled to know that to determine whether he's a suitable person for to be an MP, a federal politician. So I intervened, and she gave me a bit of a backhander and said, yes, I am a publisher, but I'm not a news publisher. The problem with that, and that's all, she gave me a bit of a backhander. She was a bit of a joke. Me and Jaggett had history from back in 2008. So I'd been before her before for unfair dismissal from Fairfax Media. So and I run a judicial corruption website, so it's no big issue that she's had a swipe at me. Well, it is a big issue. She shouldn't have done it, but I'm not too phased about it. But Porter v. Australian Broadcasting Corporation, Sue Chrysanthou herself had to be restrained by the federal court from representing
Yep.
Christian Porter. They had to institute
Yep.
proceedings. I don't know. I can't recall the lady. What's the lady's name? She instituted proceedings because Sue Chrysanthou had previously given another person advice.
Oh, Joe Dyer. Joe Dyer.
Joe Dyer, that's it,
Right.
in relation to the matter, or in relation to Christian Porter and the same sort of issues, basically the same issues. And Sue Chrysanthou had to be restrained by the court, ended up paying something like $400,000-500,000 in costs. She appealed it. She lost the appeal. I wrote an article calling her a corrupt barrister after the appeal. I got an email from Twitter saying we've had a complaint from Kennedy's lawyers in relation to the tweet I did promoting the article. And I had a look who represented Sue Chrysanthou in the Porter matter when she had to have her own representation to
Kennedy's.
fight being restrained from representing him was Kennedy lawyers. Now, I never heard anything more from it, but that's a personal interest she's got. When she raised the Porter versus Australian Broadcasting Corporation, she humiliates herself. Okay, a
Yeah.
judge gave me criticism, but who cares? I run a judicial corruption website. I'm always going to cop that. They're going to always look to line me up. But she had to be
Yeah.
restrained, which is huge for a
Yes.
barrister, lying in deceit.
Yes, I remember this. I remember this quite well, Shane. So she took on that Porter job even after a senior barrister friend had warned her not to take on the job because it might end up like this, and saying that people wouldn't be happy with her either publicly. And so she was warned before taking the job, and then she still took it on. And as you're saying, as you've explained, she's then had to be restrained by court orders to because of a clear conflict of interest where she could have used information from a previous client related to this case with the alleged rape of involving Christian Porter, which why he was trying to sue the ABC for defamation. Um, and so it was quite low legal behavior because one of the first principles or basic principles is don't get yourself involved in a perceivable conflict of interest. And so uh, I think Sue Chrysanthous here, as I said, with similar to with Dr. Collins having a go at me, Sue Chrysanthous given a go at you, knowing because neither of us were represented at this defamation case, even though all parties have had their say on us from all spectrums and all angles, because neither of us were legally represented. This is just another low blow from the legal fraternity at hardworking journalists just having as I said, a go at us because they can and they know that we can't say something in front of the judge. The worst thing, I think you agree with me, Shane. The worst thing lawyers hate, the biggest thing lawyers hate is journalists actually being in a courtroom and stepping in front of the judge and arguing against suppression orders. Lawyers love suppression orders. You and I are one of the few journalists in Australia who regularly fight against unfair suppression orders. And so they know this. These lawyers all know our backgrounds. They know what we've done. They know we're not dubious. They just know that we don't play the official game. And so
Now,
this is their way of having a go at us.
now, there's a couple of things there. It really a backfire in a big way. If Justice Lee, who's looking at after the defamation case for Lehrmann, if he was to look at that, he'd say, well, Dowling might cop a little bit of criticism, but that's the case where Sue Chrysanthou had to be restrained. It's really an
Yeah.
own goal for her to raise that. She should be so ashamed of Porter versus Australian Broadcasting
It's
Corporation.
a shocking.
She never raises the case again, but she's
It's
actually
a
raised it. What a moron.
It's a joke of
Uh,
a case. Everyone views that Porter versus ABC case as a joke. And so for her to use that to somehow buttress her position for Lisa Wilkinson, when all it is having a go at you personally, who, as I said, we're not officially part of this case. They didn't have the guts, the legal fraternity, the elites of Australia didn't have the guts to get you and me on the stand to just give our viewpoint and our perspective. And so
Now,
this is
I did think about writing to the judge. I didn't do it because I don't want to get anywhere near interfering or being accused of interfering. But I did think about emailing Justice Lee and saying, look, hey, I've been criticised in these written submissions. Can I respond? But I didn't do it because I don't want to be accused of interfering. But let's move on to the second, and you know it well too. The second judgment she's referenced in relation to me. She
Yeah.
says the court knows Kangaroo Court of Australia well. And the second one she references is Seven Network Operations Limited v. Dowling. That's actually Channel 7 and also the parent company. There's a second applicant in that matter, Seven West Media v. Dowling, as per Justice Reeves. Now, that's the one where there's an outstanding arrest warrant
Yeah.
on the
New South Wales fugitive, Shane.
Kerry Stokes, who was running the case behind the scenes, just like he ran the
Bruce Lehrmann's?
not so much Bruce Lehrmann, although I'm 100% sure he's got a big say in it. Ben Robert Smith case.
Yeah,
he was very hands-on running that. He was looking at the evidence. They did up a brief of evidence for directly for Kerry Stokes. He was up to his neck in it. And when it came to the crunch, when he had to hand over emails because they were fighting over costs, and as soon as they ordered him to, he appealed that. He was ordered to hand over emails and all that, showing his involvement, everyone's involvement there at Seven. He lost. He had to hand over all these emails. He appealed it. As soon as he lost the appeal, bang, yes, we'll pay the full amount.
We won't give the emails. We'll pay a fine instead. Exactly. Millions of dollars.
So the bottom line is Seven Network, which is Channel 7 and the parent company, Seven West Media, on the instructions of Kerry Stokes, had Justice Reeves stitched me up for contempt of court for breaching suppression orders or whatever it was. And from a case from 2017, I sentenced to 10 months jail. I tried to have the matter numerous times transferred to Queensland. I've been here since 2019. They refused. They refused to transfer a sister company, a related matter, which is Capilano Honey v. Dowling, where Capilano Honey and the other person suing me, Ben McKee, who was a CEO, both based in Queensland, both in Brisbane, and I'm based in Queensland. All the parties were in Queensland, but they refused to transfer that to Queensland as well. This shows you what they're up to. With the 7-1, well, normally when there's a big company suing an individual, someone like Channel 7 have a big office up here, they'll transfer it. And so they should. But they refused to transfer it, and I was stitched up for 10 months jail. So dubious, they won't enforce it. And that's why when you watch my videos, I start them off with a fugitive Australian journalist, Shane Dowling, and give them the middle finger every time I publish a video. When I do the podcast, I don't do that part, call myself fugitive, because I don't want to get other people involved in my battles. But she's raised that. And here's a kicker. Who was a barrister who represented Seven Network and Seven West Media?
Let me guess. Surely it wasn't her husband, Shane. Surely it wasn't her husband.
Yep, it was her husband, Kieran Clark. And if you watch the Lehrmann trial, you would have heard at least once Sue Chrysanthou say, I spoke to Mr. Smark this morning, and she knows that the judge obviously knows that's her husband as well, Kieran Smark. He was a barrister. So there's Sue Chrysanthou having a financial interest. In the first one, Porter v. ABC, Sue Chrysanthou has a personal interest because she was involved. She had to be restrained. And she complained about that article I wrote about it to Twitter. So there's a personal interest she has, a direct personal interest. In the Seven Network, she has a financial interest by her husband. Wonder if Kerry Stokes said, look, I'll give you an extra 100K if you slip this judgment in your submissions just to piss them. Who knows? But she should declare that. I find that amusing. And you've got to remember, they're the ones shit scared to enforce a warrant anyhow.
What's interesting here, Shane, is I'll make a serious point. When she mentioned during the actual defamation case and the cross-examinations, she mentioned when she was having a bit of a toing and froing with Justice Lee, she talked about how there was a precedent or something related to a recent case, a defamation case, involving a former Australian soldier, Heston Russell, who sued the ABC for defamation. And she clearly mentioned while she was toing and froing with Justice Lee that she was personally involved in that case, and she's reminded Justice Lee that they were both kind of involved in that case from memory. Why didn't she mention that in the submission to while she's talking about you? Oh, by the way, I was a lawyer for Porter. By the way, my husband was a lawyer for Channel 7 in this matter. Like, it's just, I find it a bit odd she has a go without declaring her interests, so to speak.
Well, the thing is, you were personally involved in the 7-1 because you wrote an article about it. But that was in 2021. There's been an arrest warrant issued in 2021, September. I think it was September 3rd from memory, by Justice Reeves for me to serve 10 months jail for contempt for breaching suppression orders. They're all running from it now. That's a huge breach of the Queensland Human Rights Act where I'm entitled to a fair trial. They should have transferred it, made multiple applications to have it transferred. They refused. I got recordings of judges acting corruptly. Now, I've got recordings of judges acting corruptly. You can hear them yourself, Justice Sakar and a few Kuntz and various other ones. They're the first things I'd file if they tried to extradite me, and they know it. And they'd have to justify why they breached the Queensland Human Rights Act by not transferring the matter. So there's a truckload of evidence that they'd be in big trouble. So they're running scared from trying to have me arrested and extradited. You personally know that too, because you wrote an article on it when you emailed Kerry Stokes, Ryan Stokes, Bruce McWilliam, and James Warburton, the CEO. They responded, Bruce McWilliam responded and said, oh, the case has nothing to do with us. An average person might think, oh, well, they're talking about themselves personally. It has nothing to do with them. They're all the senior executives of Channel 7. So that's what the person might be thinking, that they're referencing the fact that they personally have nothing. But then they go on to say, or Bruce McWilliam in the email, but if you want to have a look at one of our 7 matters, because they ran 4 slap lawsuits against me, they start talking about another matter involving 7. So he's admitting if it's 7, it involves them. So he out and out lied in that email that Channel 7 were involved, which is crazy because the matter name is 7 Network v. Dowling. So do you remember that when you wrote that article?
I remember this. I remember the headline as well, something about like Kerry Stokes and Channel 7 are hopping to throw me in jail over journalism because you're Kangaroo Court of Australia. I remember that they were kind of, the fact I got a response from them was kind of surprising because I'd sent Bruce McWilliams a few requests about certain issues. I never got a response in the past. And so for them to respond, and they responded really quickly as well, within a few hours. So it showed they were scared about me even just asking questions. I thought they were just going to give me the fob off. And from memory, that article did help. I guess New South Wales kind of embarrassed New South Wales police, didn't it? Not to harass you, so to speak. And you've been a free fugitive, so to speak, up in the sunny Queensland, state of Queensland for the last few years. But yeah, I remember just as another example of Kerry Stokes using his billions to bully the free transfer of information. You've been a thorn in Kerry Stokes and Channel 7's side by telling the truth about a number of matters which relate to their some were scandals, some were business matters, but all of them ultimately showed how Kerry Stokes runs his business as almost a personal fiefdom. And so he was very unhappy with your journalism, Shane. But what beggars belief here is why Sue Chrysanthou got herself so involved to even bring this stuff up for Lisa Wilkinson. All she had to do was do what Dr. Matt Collins did and just call us dubious of ill repute and leave it at that. Why get herself pulling out these court cases trying to impress Justice Lee? It's just, as I said, this whole case is one big absurd joke. Not the crime itself, not the cover-up itself, but all the cases. The criminal case was a joke with that rogue juror and all Linda Reynolds' husband taking notes in the back seat of the courtroom. Also many things. And so this is just another example. To me, this is an absurd joke. More of the public has cottoned on to what an absurd joke. There's no actual justice to this case. Hopefully Justice Michael Lee can show get through some of the clouds of darkness and give a bit of a statement of what happened and clear things up for many people. But as I said, Shane, this whole case from beginning to end is an absurd joke, which shows you the state of the Australian political system and the health of the Australian political system at the moment, which is, as you probably agree with, is very it's on critical, isn't it?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things there. Just one last thing on the 7 matter. That's old media trying to silence new media. He ran 4 slap lawsuits against me, Kerry Stokes, with him and his associated companies. He actually even sued me personally originally from 214 to 222. Did exactly the same thing with Ben Robert Smith, tried to silence a SMH journalist, Chris Masters and who's other?
Nick McKenzie.
Nick McKenzie. two well-credentialed journalists. He tried to silence them. He wanted to trash their reputations. He tried to get the police to investigate them as well. The kicker is, like you said, why does Sue Chrysanthou even raise these? Or maybe our podcast had something to do with it. We've been critical of them.
Well, the podcasts have been getting very good views, haven't they, Shane? And very good feedback on both on Twitter and on YouTube. And I suspect some of the lawyers have watched what we've said, and some of the comments we've made have probably hit close to the bone.
Well, I think 100% they'd listen to us because there's not that much media reporting on the matter. While they might be national media report on it, they're very short and sharp to a large degree. There are a few doing long form and lengthy podcasts on it, but not that many. So I suspect they would listen to us. And because we break different information, which the old media don't do, I suspect they would listen to us. One last thing is, I wonder if Lisa Wilkinson signed off on it and said, yeah, drop the boot into Dowling, because I've written a couple of articles about her. I wrote one article saying she should be charged with contempt of court after the Logie speech. And I think the Logie speech and her ducking and weaving when she gave evidence during this matter, the Lehrmann trial, on whether she had any training on sub judice, which means she should have shut her mouth when a court case is afoot. She was ducking and weaving on that big time. I wonder if she signed off and agreed with Sue Chrysanthou, in fact, deviating from the whole case just to have a personal attack on me. So you have to wonder. What do you think?
As I said, reading the submissions where they've mentioned us, all three submissions from Lehrmann's lawyers, from Channel 10, from Sue Chrysanthou representing Lisa Wilkinson, that whole paragraph, so detailed, really jumps out why when I was reading all the excerpts that relate to you and me, or to True Crime News Weekly, Kangaroo Court of Australia, that bit where Sue Chrysanthou really singles you out and picks on you just really jumped out, because there's no reason for that to be in this case. She could have left it, as I said. Some people think this website is a bit dubious. New South Wales courts have had to deal with a publisher a number of times. So she could have said something like that. She did, because, as I said, if we were such key parts of this case, if we were so important and we're so integral to this case, why didn't any of these people call us up onto the stand? So all of this is theatre, Shane. And so, as I said, thank you for making Shane and I stars of a historical defamation case. And not having the guts to get us on the stand to tell our truth as journalists. But the public has had their eyes wide open thanks to the last few months of the defamation case, and thanks to our series of podcasts. All the feedback I've received has been very, very positive.
Thank you for watching the podcast with myself and Serkan. Now, Justice Lee, who heard the Bruce Lehrmann trial, has reserved his judgment. He'll probably hand down a judgment in the next few weeks, or maybe next few months. He hasn't given an exact time frame, but I don't think he's going to take too long. And that's the fourth podcast I've done with Serkan on the matter. And I'll put a link to the previous 3 podcasts below this video on YouTube, so you can watch them all if you'd like to. And Kangaroo Court of Australia's independent media. I publish a website and a YouTube channel. And I'm 100% crowdfunded from viewers like yourself. So please support my Patreon account. Currently have 345 patrons, donating $2,368 a month. And I need to almost double that to become financially viable. And you can donate any amount, $3, $5, $10, $15, $20, $30, $40, $50 a month, whatever suits your budget. It all helps out. And I'll put a link to the Patreon account below this video on YouTube, and also on my website, Kangaroo Court of Australia. Please share this video on social media. Thank you for your time and have a good day.